Okay, so this lecture is going to be about mobilizing organizations for health promotion, and we're going to talk about the different theories of organizational change. Yes, there are theories regarding how organizations change. So the role of these theories. Well, theories describe the distribution of power and the resources in an organization, how those organizations function, how those people interact in those organizations, and how the organization systems maintain themselves. Theories must be empirically tested and verified. If you've ever taken a science class, then you know that for something to be able to be a theory, it has to have been tested and for efficiency and make sure that it was verified. It has to have independent and dependent variables. They must be identified in order to test those theories. And theories can contain assumptions about a cause and effect relationship. So that means that there's a hypothesis, per se, about what's going to cause what to occur. So theories can either be broad and abstract and pertain to a general pattern in society, or it can describe patterns that occur in specific situations. And we'll talk about the different types. So the effect aspect of cause and effect relationships are the outcomes, the things that occur because of a specific event or action. Consequently, they suggest that a specific action or skill that can be used by health workers to produce a result. So general and more specific theories lead to practice, activities, and model, which we call an intervention or a cause, that lead to an outcome or effect. So you have a theory, and then you have the theory of an intervention will cause a outcome or an effect. In public health, we use theories to define a specific set of actions or interventions that can be used to produce an outcome. They may also apply aspects of theories to certain situations. For example, a power dependency theory tells us that resource donors acquire power by transferring money and goods to people that can't reciprocate that. This suggests that a nonprofit organization should not accept funds from a single large donor if they want to be independent. This theory can also be applied to relationships between clients who receive free services and the organization. Unless the client has alternative options for service and can go without the service, can exchange services with the organization, or use power to pressure the organization, they will be dependent upon and obligated to the organization. That's a power dependency theory. So in healthcare, we differentiate between perspective theories and a model. So a perspective is an approach to practice that involves basic value assumptions about best practices. For an example, the strength perspective tells us to look at an individual, community, or organization's strength rather than their deficits or their weaknesses. Perspectives gives us only a very general information about an outcome or a specific action that may be produced. A theory contains an assumption about a cause and effect relationship that have been established as valid through testing. Theories help us link specific actions or an intervention with a specific outcome, which might mean my theory is if I educate someone about their blood sugar, then they will be more likely to manage their blood sugar and keep it in a normal range. That would be a theory. So a practice model provides detailed frameworks for understanding social problems and developing responses to those problems. Models can include a theoretical framework, an intervention approach, and probable outcomes associated with this approach. So the practice model is how am I going to, and gives me specific directions on how I'm going to change that person's behavior so that they do monitor their blood sugar and keep it in a normal range. So the historical overview of organizational theories. Well, there was a guy named Weber. He developed organizational theories in the early part of the 20th century. It was based on German models of public organization, ideal organizations, and organizational structure. It clearly defines supervisory structures and standardization of tasks. Decision making was to be rational and not based on political motives. Now, we know that that's not always true. Taylor developed what we consider the scientific management theory. This method was to be used by managers to find the most efficient or scientific method for breaking down work into concrete tasks that could be assigned to individual workers. Efficient performance was expected to maximize the work output. Often efficiency experts were brought into industrial plants to conduct time and motion studies to find the best allocation of staff, resources, and skill assignments. So there's some basic assumptions of the systems approach that are incorporated to many theories about how organizations work. Organizational systems change constantly through interaction and exchange with their environments. Effective organizational systems are highly open, but boundaries between the organizational system and its external environment are well defined. Organizational systems may be orderly and predictable, but may also be disorderly and unpredictable. Order may rest on coercion and domination, as well as consensus and cooperation. So there may be a balance between the leaders using coercion and domination, as well as using consensus of the group and cooperation. There may be a mix of that. It places equal emphasis on conflict and change as order and stability. So the human relations theory. It originates from experiments that were conducted on plant workers at an AT&T factory in Chicago. This was known as the Hawthorne effect. The researchers found that, among other things, that people simply react and change their behavior in response to being observed. Other major findings were that organizations have unique cultures influenced by the values of participants and the fact that people tend to form groups. Consequently, most workplaces contain informal leaders who may influence the behavior of other workers. It's important to identify who these leaders are when you're trying to make organizational change. These leaders and the values shared by the group members influence how these workers perform. Mayo, the primary researcher in this theory, based his theory on the assumption that managers should attempt to use these group norms to influence and motivate workers. He also argued that workers need to feel that they have a certain amount of control over their own work. We call this autonomy. They should also be given awards for performance. He also felt that workers performed better when they were in teams or groups. Other theories focused on organizational structure. So organization culture and groups of people interacting in that organization, how the organizations adapt to their external demands, and how power is achieved and used in the organization. In public health, we tend to use strengths and systems approaches. The systems perspective can be used to create a model of the different component parts of organizations and their environments. Empowerment is a perspective. It's a distinct model of practice and is a theory in development, some empirical testing and identification of specific types of outcomes. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all these, but these are different models of organizational practice. They include what we call Theory X, which is control, discipline, and sanctions. Theory Y, which is management that can take action so that employees will become motivated to do their work. There's the contingency theory, which employees are motivated by different things, but need to achieve a sense of competency. Human relations approach to maximize performance. Staff members need autonomy, involvement in management decisions, and appropriate rewards. Theory X, which focus on the quality of production, collective accountability, and loyalty. Participatory management. Staff involved in organizational decision-making increases job satisfaction and productivity. The feminist management fights oppression, creates management partnerships among participants, and assumes women manage differently than men. And total quality management. Management produces an organizational culture based on product quality, consumer satisfaction, and standardization of production and employee empowerment. Real organizational change and practice occurs on all these different theories. These are all individual theories, but realistically in real life we use all of them. So empowerment model and health practice. This kind of shows you the health worker would be considered a facilitator, and they would inform groups, do self-help groups, leadership training, and the outcome would be worker self-efficacy and policy change. Now, the organization itself would be the resource provider, and their ultimate goal is political power to get more constituents and provide better service. So you can see how each person has a distinct role, but the way that that role would occur and change is very, very different. And here's some of the processes that people would use to get to those outcomes. And here's the actual outcomes that would come from each person. Now, these are the theoretical components of the empowerment model. Again, I'm not going to go through every one of these, but these are things that you need to know, so make sure that you read through these. These are all different theories in regards to organizational change. So, introduction to the startup.com, understanding an organizational culture. Values and perspectives of organizations' participants influence how the organizations function. The organization's mission and the philosophy of the managers and other decision makers influence what the organization can do. Participants bring their own experiences and ways of interacting into the organization. Organization structure and technology also influence how the organization operates and the influence the organization has on its members. So this is understanding what an organization culture. All these things determine what we consider an organizational culture.